Okay, we are recording, and I'll do the intro. Welcome to A Mindfulness Experience with access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute, the GW Office of Integrative Medicine. Excuse me? What? What's wrong?
Everybody, please mute.
Oh. Okay. We'll start it again. Welcome to A Mindfulness Experience with access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute, the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, and the GW Resiliency and Well-being Center. AIM is the first 501c3 nonprofit in the Washington, D.C. metro area to provide integrative medicine services to low-income and terminally ill patients, regardless of their ability to pay. The office is a global leader in integrative medicine, focusing on professional development and community outreach events like this one. And the center takes an evidence-based whole person approach to the health, wellness, and well-being services that we provide to the GW Medical Enterprise, that's the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, GW Medical Faculty Associates, or as it's going to be known as, GW Medicine, and the GW Hospital. Today we have with us a very, very familiar face, Dr. Mikhail Misha Kogan, MD. Misha is the founder of AIM Health Institute. He is the Chief Medical Officer of the GW Center for Integrative Medicine. And he is an Associate Professor of Medicine at the GW School of Medicine and Health Sciences. This is going to be all Misha all the time today, folks. So he's doing the Q&A, wellness talk, and the mind-body practice. So I'm just going to turn things over to Misha and we can get to going.
Well, hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well in this, I don't know, in DC area. We have a magnificent Friday. It's beautiful. It's getting warm. Looks like, for me, unfortunately, winter is over. Which brings me to a topic of last Saturday. I think the race went amazingly well. I'm completely hooked. I think it's going to be hard not to repeat something like this, especially since I did close to 45 minutes faster than I expected. So I was hoping to do 5 hours. I ended up doing just over 4 hours, like 4 hours and 14 minutes. So it's an incredible time considering that I really wasn't fully prepared, and the fact that I didn't even get soreness after the race. Went back straight to work on Monday and feeling wonderful. So I attribute this, at least in part, to some of the supplementation that I did, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. That's going to be part of today's talk. But I don't think we have numbers yet. Elisa may correct me in terms of how much we fundraised. Remember, this was a fundraising for AIM. I'll put the link into the chat.
I'm walking on a street in New York right now, Misha. I don't have anything. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We can. I don't see this being essential. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think I tremendously enjoyed the process, and I hope I raised some money. So that is good enough for me. But anyway, I just posted the link there in case anybody wants to take a look. But yeah, apparently this is the hardest race in the world, given how much hills there are. There is 45 kilometers of hills nonstop. So you basically go up and down the entire time, except for the last 5 kilometers when it's kind of flattens out. Yeah, so let's do this. Let me do as usual. So we'll do a COVID update. There's some other updates. Then I'll do Q&A, and then we'll talk about a topic. And you'll see the topic is actually linked to the race somewhat. So continuing with last week's, the flu is indeed overtaken mortality-wise severity this year in almost half of the states, in 22 states. And flu is continuing to be a big problem. So I always said to you that don't get vaccinated against flu halfway through the season because it's too late, virus mutated. However, if you're high risk, meaning you have an active cancer, active immune suppressive state, or some kind of a strong history of a very bad inflammatory condition, you could consider even getting vaccinated now, even though, as I said, season is mostly, in essence, flu season is getting close to an end. COVID updates, there are a couple of things, and they're somewhat interesting. So one, there is that study that I presented to you last week spiked horrendous amount of kind of, well, not just cynical outputs, but just a lot of back and forth. Some of it was very against the Yale group, which I couldn't believe because their paper was very, very well presented and very careful in their statements. Of course, the anti-vax groups took it as, well, we told you so kind of effect, which is not actually the message of the article. But what it really spiked, which I like, what it really spiked to me is the fact that complexity of immunogenic response to the virus, and as such also to the vaccine. And subsequently, I've done some reading and I've noticed a pretty consistent increase in the discourse and the research that the reason the COVID gotten so rapidly progressive and took so many lives and gave us such a long tail of the pandemic is its capacity to mutate. And that's an interesting discussion in itself. So that's what I want to speak a little bit about. If you look at other viruses, even the viruses that are very malignant and very quickly mutating, like flu virus, for example, a good one, when that happens, we have some predictability in the sort of how mutations occur and what happens after. The interesting aspect of COVID is that it appears that a lot of people didn't clear it quickly. And that inability to clear the virus in sometimes in several weeks, if not several months, is what's most likely responsible to multitudes of mutations. So when virus jumps from one person to another, the amount of mutation that can occur is significantly smaller when the virus sits in the same person for several weeks. And this is the problem here, because the vaccine has no true capacity to help us completely clear the virus, in essence. What really does is the innate strength of immune system. The vaccine will supposed to help to mount quick immune response, but mounting quick immune response is not necessarily all of the game. You can mount quick immune response, but not clear the virus. So having the antibodies and establishing an early response is not a guarantee of a clearance of the virus. So I think what is essentially going to come out of a lot of the current research is understanding why some people are not clearing. My take on this is that until we have a specific tool to decrease length of stay of the virus or increase clearance, we basically have to be conservative. So we have to say, look, well, what can I do? Well, you definitely can and you should continuously enhance immune system. So you have to strengthen the body innate capacity to clear viral infections as general principle. And we know what those things are, right? So we have a whole list of things that help us to clear viruses. Many of them are indeed nutritional support, things like zinc, things like vitamin C. We talked a lot about this, and I'm not going to actually go back to this today. I just want to give you some of these important updates. that I think are critical. And so with that context, I think what this Yale research said, that basically there is a significant proportion of patients who got a vaccine who developed this post-vaccination syndrome, which is basically reminiscent of chronic fatigue syndrome. And it appears particularly strong in people who had chronic other viral infections. Primarily, they concentrate on Epstein-Barr virus or mono. So I think they simply picked the group of people who already predisposed to poor clearing of the virus. That's the trick. And that's where I think it's critical. I hope that in the next couple of years, we'll understand why some people evolve into getting these issues. It's actually critically important for many more issues than just viral. For example, we know now, right, that the continuous herpes or frequent herpes outbreak strongly linked to very high risk of Alzheimer's disease. So Epstein-Barr virus, frequent recurrences or chronic, strongly linked to a bunch of cancers. So we know that this chronic immunogenicity, this chronic persistence of some viral infections is really bad for us. It likely generates chronic inflammatory response. It likely predisposes us to a variety of different chronic illnesses. Some of them are life-threatening. So once we get a grip on that, I think there will be some understanding of, well, why is the immune response in this person different from immune response in this person? Why one person clears virus in one day and another person in 1 month, right? So that's the aspect. And what can we do to enhance this, right? We know that the vaccines is not going to be an answer for this because it's an innate immune problem. And frankly, I've actually now seen several patients who basically had vaccines, they didn't work. They kept on getting COVID. They kept on getting COVID prolonged for weeks, if not months, sort of kind of a dormant, semi-active form of COVID. And that's the trick. So vaccine will work well for an average person who can quickly get over the virus. But the antibodies is only part of the game. And so with that, I'm about to finish this part. So with that, I'm definitely gonna be gradually looking at other tools that we can do that will help all of us to strengthen the immune response to that extent. So that's this part. And let me pause because we're at 2:15 and I think it's perfect timing. I finished with my kind of general overview of the COVID updates. And of course, you all hear about the measles spike, and also the bird flu is continuing to be something of sort of a concern. I finally realized what was going on with the vaccine, why they were not sort of pushing the vaccine onto the birds. Well, it turns out it's a cost issue actually more than anything. It's actually, believe it or not, cheaper for them to kill chickens than go around giving them shots. I know it sounds insane, but that sounds like that's the real issue. So they're trying to figure out how to make the vaccine cheap enough so that they can give it to the birds. Because eggs just went up in price again, and it seems like there's no end point here. There is other birds that are beginning to die out. For example, there's a sandhill crane that's a pretty common species of crane that in parts of the country is like basically getting completely wiped out. So don't think it's just chickens. It's a lot of other birds in the country that are suffering from bird flu. And again, I mean, as such, it's a zoonotic, if you will, source of infection that the longer it sits around, the more likely it will jump to us, right? So for now, it's not happening. But I mean, if it does do so, then, are we ready for the next pandemic? But so far there hasn't been, the jump hasn't occurred. And, yeah, so it's completely safe to consume the chickens. Because you're not gonna eat them raw. You're gonna cook them. The moment you cook them, any viral particle is gonna die out instantly, like within a few minutes of cooking. So there's no problem with that. The problem is, the jump will occur if the bird flu will become transmittable from human to human. That's what has to happen. And for that to happen, there has to be certain mutations that have to be introduced. But remember what I was just talking about, the COVID? The longer things circulate, the more likely it's going to harness the mutations that indeed will promote the jump. So that's the concern. The concern that we all should be having is why is the government responding so slow and really not dealing with the issue in birds? Because eventually it may jump. So far, it didn't jump like you asked, but if it does jump, then we're going to have a problem.
Well, I have a question, doctor, about the long COVID. And, I got it for the first time at like the third week of January. And in November, I had taken the vaccine because I had to go to Boston for a funeral. And so I got it in a family gathering, and 5 of us got it at the same time. And after 4 days, the teenagers and the 60-year-old were back to work and everything. But I kept testing for like 3 weeks, and it was still positive, and it was making me really depressed because all of us who had caught it at the same time, they had gone back to school, and my granddaughter said that, now the thing is, like, if you are not symptomatic, if you have fever and symptoms, or you don't have it, then you can go back to school or work. But I didn't have any symptoms other than, sniffles, but I kept testing positive for like 3.5 weeks. And that goes into—
That's hard to interpret, actually, because positive test doesn't mean you have an active illness. Positive test simply says that, there is an antibody that's still circulating and then test because of that is positive. That is not necessarily a big problem. It's just the tests that we're using, they're not adequate to decide, do you still have a live virus in the system or not? That's the problem. So to do that, you would need to run blood PCR each time. It's prohibitively expensive, and nobody was doing this. And nobody, I mean, that can only be done in the research settings. So if you had no symptoms and you just kept testing positive, I wouldn't call it a long COVID. I mean, long COVID by default, you have to have a lot of symptoms. You have to have symptoms for months after the infection.
A second question. Now that I have had it, is it possible that I could get like some long COVID effects, like my smell and other—
When was your COVID?
Pardon me?
When was your COVID, the acute COVID?
Like the third week of January into the second.
It's theoretically still possible. We do see periodically patients who completely recover and 3 months later start having long COVID. It's completely possible. It's not very common. Most of the common scenario is people have symptoms and they're not fully resolving. So there's some symptoms left and then they kind of get worse. That is much more common. But I have seen scenarios where COVID completely resolved, and then 3 to 6 months later, patients start gradually having increased long COVID-like symptoms. So yes, theoretically possible. Okay. But I don't think that you should interpret COVID tests, positive COVID tests for several weeks as anything concerning.
Okay, thank you.
Could you answer the question about the measles vaccine, please, or the measles booster? It was right before her chicken.
Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. No, I haven't seen this. What you can do if you're concerned is to actually go get a measles test. It's a very easy test. Problem getting a boosters for measles, there is no pure measles vaccine. That's the problem. You're going to end up with MMR or something similar. So you're going to get a vaccine that's going to have 3 or 4 things in it. My opinion on things you don't need, right? So we have a lot of vaccines we should be getting in that sense. So I would be careful. I'd rather just have you tested.
I had them all. I had them all anyway. I had my own personal MMR.
So yeah, I mean, if you test yourself, and can you guys hear the dogs? Sorry. If you test and measles is fine, the level titers are strong, then what's the point of boosting? That's how I think. I actually think a lot about like chickenpox. I think the same way. Even some other, like, I think about a lot of the viruses in that same, a lot of the vaccines in the same matter. Like it just helps me to help the patient not to get stuff that's not necessarily needed. Let me come back to other questions because some of them are really important. So we've seen a lot of people after vaccine have a significant autoimmune conditions flare. I even had that in my family. My own mom developed severe worsening of lichen planus right after the vaccine within 1 week.
Okay.
So we know that it's happening. Remember, I mentioned that we had a grand rounds about 1.5 years ago from head of a lupus program in California. And he's like, I'm not giving boosters to my patients because we're seeing so much flare of lupus after shots that at some point they started to be very careful with vaccinations for people who are relatively healthy otherwise. If they had an original shots, that they often were like really. So it's yes, it's a big concern, period. And so how do you balance this between getting a COVID, because obviously COVID will do the same, and plus this new study in essence confirms this. The study I presented last week basically exactly says what you're pointing out. It basically says they checked a bunch of markers in the blood, and patients who had that continuous post-vaccine syndrome, whatever it is, they've had all kinds of inflammatory markers go up, and most of them are autoimmune markers. That's it. Rhonda, I don't know if the same website still works. Can somebody, because I can do it all at the same time since I'm talking today all hour. So if somebody can go ahead and Google this, if the link still works. I think last time I ordered 4 free kits was about 3 months ago, 4 months. So I don't know if they're still allowing it. But if they do, go ahead, keep ordering free kits. So you don't have to pay.
They're not allowing it. They have it in their system that you've already ordered, and they tell you.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. That's exactly what I thought. So there's no more news cycle. If you already ordered it once since the fall last year, then they won't let, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I tried it and they told me no.
Yeah, I mean, you have other choices. You can find another address. Has to be another address. Has to be the address that never had the kits received. If you put different name and the same address, it's not going to work. They go by address, not by the name. I already tried multiple times.
Okay.
But different address will work. And they will not send to the business address. Has to be residential address. Okay. Post office, interesting. I have not heard that. Cool. Yes, libraries. So yeah, keep looking. Don't worry if they expired. I still use expired. Most of the time they're okay. Right. Yeah, that doesn't work. I tried adding apartments. Didn't work, but maybe I should try again. Because I guess the system knows that it's not an apartment building. Yeah, somehow. But yeah, you can keep trying different things just to get around that. Okay, we would be able to get information. No, not right now. There's a complete gag currently on CDC. They basically dismantled the update. So if you go to the CDC website, you're going to see a pretty outdated, like more than a month old information. So how often they will update, and they probably won't even use their own data. They'll probably keep taking data from WHO. So. Does having had measles or other disease rendered you covered? For measles? Yeah, sure. If you had measles once, you're done. The same with vaccine. The chances of measles vaccine going away in terms of is pretty small, less than 10%. So most people are gonna have lifelong immunity from one shot or from the series of original shots. No, there's no such thing as a gene editing. It's not possible, right? So you're talking about large components of tissues being infected. Gene editing could only work with a very targeted tissue. In fact, I just went to a pretty advanced seminar on this topic, and there is not a lot happening. A lot of the problems with some of this is the vector systems. So in order to edit any gene, you have to have a robust vector system. Most of the time it's adenoviruses like a cold virus. And the problem is they don't infect a lot of different tissues. So they cannot deliver some of this inoculation things. It's basically gene therapy, right? So they can't deliver it to lots of target areas. So it's a very slow growing research because of that, because the vectors are complicated. And also there's no interest in that. There's no marketing because in order to do something like this, the expenses are massive, but the cost recovery is minimal. So there is no commercial interest in gene editing at the moment. And it's not clear if it will ever change. But we'll keep an eye on this. I mean, I'm guessing that where it can be quite successful in a very specific tissue, rare disorders, where delivery can be very precise and to a very specific organ. There, gene therapies has massive future. But for diseases that affects large compartments like a brain, musculoskeletal structures, etc., the delivery is going to be very, very tricky. So it's not quite even close to sort of any future here.
Dr. Kogan, this is Linda on follow-up. Is the inoculation research, I'm not talking gene editing now, I'm talking about like getting a shot or something to give you protection against?
There is no such thing.
No such thing? I thought there was research going on that.
No,
Okay.
You can't. There's no vaccine against herpes viruses. There's no the cold sore viruses. It's not. I forgot what the problem. Why wouldn't it be the case? It's a good question. Why they're not doing this? This has nothing to do with gene editing. It's a separate. But I haven't heard of attempt at. There have been attempts to create vaccines for like HSV6, which is not your most common herpes virus, and some other less common herpetiform or herpetic viruses. But I have not heard of like a herpes 1 or 2 vaccines being developed. So maybe I just haven't paid attention. But you can definitely Google this if this has happened. Yeah, because I think that would obviously be an important vaccine to try to develop. If you can inoculate, oh, I know what the problem is. The problem is very simple. Boosting antibodies against herpes 1 or 2 does nothing. That's the problem. Having a high antibody titers does not protect against the flares. That's the reason. So it's not like they cannot create vaccine. It's just going to do nothing. It's not going to be effective. The flares of the herpes. Oh, this is another great example. Remember we talked about non-antibody immunity? That is the reason. So antibodies for herpes virus are going to be there lifelong and they're going to be high. So if you, in fact, that's how we diagnose, right? The way we diagnose someone with having herpes history is just checking their antibodies. But the antibodies are not protective. So they're protective to a certain degree. They're probably protective against dying from it, but they're not protective from a flare. So people who have frequent flares of herpes, they usually have some other non-antibody based immune deficiency. Remember, immune system is very, very sophisticated. So that's the part of the problem here. I think that's why, you know, trying to optimize antibody response is useless. You have to really work on your general immune system. By the way, one of the most important things we're always not thinking through is the value of a central nervous system balance, which controls the immune system. So a person in an overstressed environment will always have immune deficiency, period. So chronic stress equals immune deficiency. There is no ifs and buts about it. There's no capacity for the body to do both. You can't be chronically stressed and have normal immune response. It's not physiologically possible. In fact, acute stress strengthens the immune system, right? I mean, it's the whole evolutionary process. When you have something straining your causing stress response, that is going to increase cortisol production. It's going to try to dampen any immediate inflammatory challenge to the body. We're not talking about acute, we're talking about chronic. Chronic exhausts this natural process. And so you end up basically tiring out the immune system and it starts failing. So that's it. Okay. Vector for gene therapy is usually a virus of some sort. That's currently what's mostly in the market or been developed. Second COVID booster 6 months after first is now recommended for seniors. Right, we don't need it. That's what I've been saying. Definitely not. Once a year that's what I currently recommend. I don't see any indication for Q6 months. I think CDC simply put that out because that's all they could say. They really have nothing else to say. So they said, let's give more so that no. There's no evidence that this is any better than once a year shot. Especially now, right, when mortality keeps on dropping. I and others were able to order again. Okay, well, cool. CJ, if you can comment how you did that, that would be nice. Okay, I had childhood measles, rubella, mumps, chickenpox, plus childhood vaccinations required, and 50 should provide good. Yes, it should be. So you should be fine. But again, Linda, if you're concerned, there's always tests that can be done. Like, if, for example, if you're really worried about what's your measles titer, okay, well, just we can check the level. Like, that's one of those things that is pretty simple, and I don't think any insurance is going to have a problem paying for those tests. They're not even expensive. I mean, it's just a simple antibody check. Okay, well, we kind of went over time because I did want to talk a little bit about creatine and some of the aspects of my race prep. I don't see any other questions.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question, please, about the booster for COVID-19? Your comment is, despite the waning factor of, at 6 months, 4 months, whatever, of these vaccines? Your comment of not having it more than annually.
They're wane after 4 weeks.
Okay.
They don't work after 4 to 6 weeks. Like, if you look in terms of what they protect you against getting the COVID, they're not protecting you for more than a few weeks.
Okay, so you still
the
don't.
waning is immediate and rapid. And if you guys are interested, go on my YouTube channel and look into that. I actually reviewed the study on how the vaccines wane. It's extremely rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the protection against severe illness doesn't wane at all. It lasts for at least 10 to 12 months. The reason CDC vaccinates Q6 has nothing to do with your personal health. You need to understand that.
No. Just CDC, the waning I was thinking about.
I see. Okay. The CDC is not in the business of telling you what to do. CDC is in business to protecting public first and foremost, right? So they know that if they do vaccinations that even twice as more frequent than once a year, there's going to be less circulating virus, which is obviously the case, right? They're not looking at individual, they're looking at general population. So, but on individual level, you need to think twice, because you know that if it's not protecting you against getting a COVID and it's only protecting you with severe illness, then you have to keep an eye on what is that difference between protection against severe illness at 6 months versus 12 months period. And there's no data.
And you're saying there's none.
6 months is any better.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Ordered from regular site, but had received a text that from someone who said they were shutting down. Oh, well, I'm not surprised. I think we need to be prepared for lots of things being shut down. Anything where they're going to perceive as a unnecessary government expense, they're going to start shutting things down. No politics on this at this hour, right? Let's stick to that, even though it's increasingly getting more and more difficult. Anyway, while I was just talking, I get this update breaking news: Zelensky White House visit abruptly ends after Oval Office shouting match with Trump. I mean, this is our life for next whatever number of years.
No politics. No
politics. I didn't say anything. I just read you the news.
But no chronic stress.
I'm unclear.
Don't worry about chronic stress. Yeah,
That's right. That's it. So remember, no matter what happens with all this, your job is remember, control what you can and have a wisdom, not worrying about things you can't control. So let go of things and practice your mindfulness and stay centered. Don't let this bog you down, because as I just told you, your chance of getting COVID is going to be higher if you do. Okay, no, that didn't come out well. It's not a punishment, right? So I'm not trying to tell you if you don't serenity prayer involve things carry that you're going to fail. No, that's not the point. All right, let me talk a little bit about the creatine and some of my race prep. So let me write this down. What are we talking about? So creatine is a pretty interesting molecule. You probably heard about this in the context of bodybuilding, but it's way, way more important and way, way more than that. Creatine is actually quite an important topic, especially now that recent studies have been indicating a pretty strong benefit for cognitive health. And the reason you may have sort of thought of, oh, you know, creatine is a kind of bodybuilders and everybody shouldn't be taking it. Well, the reason for that is there's been data a long time ago, decades ago, that there are some side effects of creatine. So concern was that creatine can worsen kidney function, and if taken in large amounts, you know, it actually has a high risk of getting into the renal failure. So that got all completely debunked over the last, I would say, 10 years, maybe a little bit less. Turned out that what is creatine, by the way? So the creatine is basically a fuel. It's a fuel to our cells, to particularly musculoskeletal cells, but it's actually also a fuel, a really good fuel for the brain cells. So it's a direct precursor, a direct source of the ATP generating. ATP is an energy molecule, right? So that's really the kind of a core aspect. Well, what is creatine? Well, creatine is a pretty interesting molecule in itself. Like if you carefully look at what it is, it's not really an amino acid. Our body can synthesize it from several amino acids. It's a kind of a complex multi-amino acid molecule and just has this name, creatine. It is stored as a phosphocreatine in the muscles. So let me put that, let me put that in the chat so you guys have some of these words. So this is how creatine is stored. So we actually make this ourselves. So we take a bunch of amino acids, like three, and we put them together into this phosphocreatine, and they sit in the muscle. And then when we need a rapid, sudden uptick in energy production, phosphocreatine gets used up. But taking regular creatine actually not only assists in making extra ATP and building muscles as such, but it actually lays down more phosphocreatine. So then when you are exercising, you have more energy in a particular muscle group to be used, and hence you can actually build more muscle. So that's a general principle, and it does apply to the brain. So it's not all about muscles, it's in any tissue that is highly metabolically active, and particularly we talk about muscles and brain. So they're definitely, so I'm going to put some of the clear proven benefits. So this is some of the clear proven muscle benefits. So enhanced strength, improved exercise performance, and slowing down of developing of muscle loss. So that's really critical, right? So what helped me for my race, I really created a very complex creatine protocol. So there is an idea of using creatine in a very, not just once a day, but in several times a day in split doses, including during the training. So I actually, and I even during the race, I was drinking hydration pack that had creatine. So I do think that part of my kind of completely lack of fatigue after no soreness the next day and really good time had to do with that in part. I mean, of course, the prep and, you know, and half an hour meditation right before I started the race, sort of, you know, really zoning into the race and playing 40 hertz music during the race rather than some rock or some other, so that it keeps me kind of really centered on the, I think any long races, a big chunk of what happens is the mental preparedness. So if your mind starts tiring out, the body will fall apart. So I think some of the stuff that I really spend a lot of time on is really getting my mind around when I start tiring out, not to slow down, not to drop off the race, etc. So yeah, this is a ski marathon. It's a 50K race. I put the link on top, but let me put it again. That's what I'm talking about. I did this race last week. So I'll put the link to the fundraiser, but there's also a link to the specific race if someone wants to take a look. All right, let me go back to the creatine. So that's a benefit for the, this is the benefit I posted in the chat for the muscles, but there's also quite a significant amount of cognitive benefits. So I'm going to put that there as well. So this is the cognitive benefits. So it's not just the memory, it's also clearly neuroprotective, and it does improve the mood. So it's antidepressant as well. Particularly, it turns out to be a pretty strong antidepressant for women undergoing hormonal transition. So around the time of menopause, that seems to be an important add-on. So the doses and safety, I'm putting that in as well. So the typical dose is 3 to 5 grams a day. That's what I take, but there's a loading dose, and there are protocols where you can take up to 20 grams a day. I don't recommend that. You have to be careful with that. There's a link there if you want to take a look. It has some of this more specific information. But generally, it's very safe. So what happened in the past when people were saying, oh my God, it's going to cause kidney problems? So what happens with the kidneys, everybody who starts taking creatine have their creatinine go up. Because the way creatine is excreted, it has to get excreted just like any other amino acids. The breakdown has to go through the kidney. And there's a problem. So creatinine goes up, and it can go up by 10, 15, 20, even 25% sometimes. In the past, that was always interpreted like, oh my God, someone's going to have a kidney failure. It turned out that is never the case. Turns out it's always benign process. Turns out that if you just stop creatine, then the creatinine will normalize and go back to where it was. But even going up slightly doesn't seem to be a problem. It never goes further up and up and up and up and then causes kidney failure. It's just there. So in fact, I used to monitor patients on creatine. Just, it used to be a kind of a wisdom if you do it, not anymore. And now I'm probably going to be, given this new safety data, given some of this rapidly increasing data on neurocognitive, I'm probably going to have almost everybody over 65 on this, pretty much almost everybody. I can't think of anyone who shouldn't be on it. Probably people who are on dialysis is going to be very difficult to manage with giving them, and people who have advanced kidney failure, because you may actually, those patients, you may sort of trick them into the actual kidney failure, and I don't think there's enough safety data. But everybody else who have more or less normal kidney function past certain age should probably consider taking it. Why? Well, you know my opinion. The length of your life will mostly depend on your muscle strength. That's why. Not on your diet, not on what diseases you have. It's not even going to depend on your on where you live. It's going to mostly depend on muscle strength. It will depend, of course, on some social factors, you know, like if you have enough income to eat well, of course, have a good communal support. But I'm talking about particularly physical aspects of longevity, not social aspects. And so muscle strength is critical. And so doing anything for that seems to be important. So, okay, I think I'm good. So it gives us about 15 minutes. I can take a question or two about this. Is creatine made naturally by, yes. So we synthesize it. And then, as I said, we synthesize it and then we store it. We store it as a phosphocreatine inside our muscles, and then we use it on demand. How much of it is in the cells? It's probably quite variable. It's an interesting question. I just thought about it to myself. I actually don't know. Yeah, so supplement recommendation, any good brand, Thorne, Designs for Health. If you're my patient, message me, I'll set it up. Otherwise, just order one. Thorne is really good. Designs for Health has a much better pricing. Not sure why. A plan for, they usually come in a pound, and pound is 450 grams. If you're going to use 5 grams, that's quite a lot, right? So that's 90-day supply. Plan on spending about $35 to $45 for a 90-day supply, so it's pretty inexpensive. Yeah, $15, $20 a month should be a good price for, roughly in there should be a good price for it. So it's not expensive. And it's always easier to take it as a powder. In fact, I've always seen it as a powder. I haven't seen it in capsules, and I wouldn't like. Why would you want to take gazillion capsules if you can just put it? It's completely dissolvable instantly. It has a very little taste. It's like slightly sour, but very little, and it's very easy to drink. You can also mix it with anything else. So. No, blood pressure meds. Oh, no. So you think of two different things. Creatine is not creatinine. Creatinine is a kidney function. Blood pressure pills can affect creatinine left and right. It's a completely separate topic, very not easy to answer. There are some blood pressure pills that always negatively impact renal function. There are some that can be protective against rise of creatinine, like ACE inhibitors, for example, thought to have a renal protective effect, but they have nothing to do with the creatine. That's a different, so just want to emphasize that. So you take it, yeah, you can take it anytime you want. So the most commonly people will take it, there's an argument whether you should take it before or after exercise. And if you Google it, the opinion seems to be all over the place. I'll tell you, it probably doesn't make any difference. I take it always first thing in the morning. When I get up, I drink a cup of water with a cup of espresso, and so I always will put it there. And then if I have a long training session, sometimes I would even take a second 5-gram dose. So yeah, no, it does not known to cause gastroenteritis. I've never heard of that.
Okay, I have a question. This is Salome.
Mm-hmm.
I've raised my hand. Since you said it's made in the body by different amino acids, are there foods that can we take that will enhance the creation?
Correct. So meats, any meats have some creatine. Just any meat, any animal sources of protein will have some creatine, but very small amounts. So creatine is one of few things you're not going to get enough without supplementation. So if you truly want to kind of give your muscles that extra boost, it has to be a supplement. There's no real way around that. So that's a great question, actually. And most of the creatine in our body, we make ourselves. So we actually synthesize it from amino acids, basically from protein we eat.
You mean if we exercise, we can't strengthen our muscles just by exercising?
No, you're not going to make that extra amount. The only way we make creatine is just from amount of protein, and apparently amount of creatine synthesized is not regulated by exercise.
Okay.
So that's why the whole supplementation came to be.
Well, do you take it every day?
It's very old research. You can go back 50 years ago when the creatine was already known.
Well, do you take it every day, or do you take it when you get ready to train for a marathon?
You can do both. So when I prep, then I would take more, so when I was in the last 4 weeks of a prep, I was taking 10 grams a day. Now, after the race, I'll be taking 5. I don't think I'll be skipping days, or maybe I will, and probably not important. Skipping a few days, probably not. Interestingly, when I skipped a few days when I was on vacation, I was kind of sore. So I don't know if that was because my muscles gotten used to getting that extra creatine or not, but just FYI. I don't know if it happens to everybody.
Okay, thanks.
There is no such thing as liposomal creatine. I can't imagine, because it's an amino acid. Why would you put it in a liposome? It makes no biologic sense of any kind. Amino acids are absorbed instantly at 100% through the mucous membranes. They're uptaken. They're not absorbed. There's a active in uptake. So yeah, so the daily dose is, look up at the link before at the information. So it's generally considered 3 to 5 grams a day. In the loading phase, in the first couple of days, you can take a lot more, up to 20 grams for first week, but you don't have to. I mean, people do that again when they're prepping for something, like if you're prepping for a race or you're prepping for some kind of competition. Sometimes people will take extra. So, all right, well, we only have 10 minutes left. So you keep asking questions, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing it would be helpful some long COVID patients. I don't have an answer to that. I didn't see research on this, but I would presume that's a great question for Ashley at some point, but yes. Mm-hmm.
You take creatine?
Bone collagen it's like any other protein. So yeah, I don't think so. I think bone collagen will not enhance the creatine production.
Well, what do you think
So,
about the gummies creatinine?
yeah, it's a gimmick. Sure,
It's a,
you can take it. That's fine. It's
it's a
just
gimmick.
it doesn't matter. As I said, it's such a stable molecule that it shouldn't make a difference. Just some people don't like powder. You know, remember, powder is going to be 2 to 5 times cheaper. So your gummies are going to be, you're still going to have to take about 5 grams of equivalent. Your gummies are going to be much more expensive, just because they have to make them. So they will take the creatine powder and made them into the gummies. I have
So,
nothing against gummies.
so if I was to do the gummies and instead of doing 5 grams a day, I did 1 gram a day over a cumulative period of time, would that affect my muscles and make this?
No, if you're taking 1 gram, it's completely useless. It's not even close.
Okay.
So you really need to get 5 grams, like
5
3 to
grams.
5 grams. Yeah, the think of it this way, even 5 grams theoretically, the reason they picked 5 grams, it has been multiple studies showing that there seems to be some kind of a saturation point around 10 to 15 grams after body equilibrates the serum level. You know, but taking 1 gram, you will never maintain the level in the blood needed to sort of maintain equilibrium. So.
And there's no reason to think that it would affect the kidneys?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. So remember, kidneys are going to be affected. And a lot of the times doctors are going to freak out. But that's not an actual true effect. You're simply having creatinine rise, but functionally, meaning there's no underlying disease of any kind. You're simply metabolizing creatine, and because of that, the creatinine goes up. And there seems to be no consequences to that. Like it just bumps up and stays there. You just have a new baseline and it's going to be permanently there until you stop creatine supplementation, or until way later when you just naturally will lose about 1% of kidney function after age of 50.
Okay, so if I was to start taking it and my creatinine would bump up.
Correct. It will bump up.
My doctor starts to freaking out about it.
Correct. That's exactly what will happen. I can guarantee you that. You will have to tell your doctor, don't worry about it, I'm fine. And good luck trying to convince your doctor.
I know, because they will try to stop.
Yeah, they're going to send you to a kidney doctor. Kidney doctor going to say, stop your creatine, because why would you take it? You know, because they wouldn't bother researching this topic. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
What is the BUN and BN creatinine ratio? Yeah, so it's a measure of hydration, and it's a measure of how much water you take relative to your kidney function. So it's a very, very, very helpful ratio that's always gets obtained when we check either basic metabolic panel or comprehensive metabolic panel. All right. Well,
is
we
the
have to
creatinine
do, you guys,
so
we have
high?
to do some practice. Okay, no more questions. We have 5 minutes. We have to stay true to the cause. You know, even 5 minutes better than nothing. So hold your question. Actually, I won't be here next week, but you know, we'll the week after. You hold the questions. Next week it's a consortium, so I think it's going to be impossible for me to run the meeting from Seattle. But anyway, so let's just find our backs straight. If you're laying down, that's fine. We're not going to have more than just a couple of minutes to center and just do a couple of breaths together. But remember, with mindfulness, often it's not the time spent, it's really the way you're allowing your body to find its center and to concentrate. And when the time is short, I highly recommend what we did last time, which is 4-7-8 breath, or just inhale on 4 and exhale on 8. And let's do inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Keep an eye on how you're feeling. See if you're mind is still racing with questions, if it's still digesting some of the topics we talked about, drop it all off. You can always go back to it. Just stay present with the breath. It's really critical to learn to manipulate our own central nervous system very quickly. I think it's one of the most important points of resiliency, and also be able to do that in absolutely any circumstances. So no matter what's faced in front of you, that you can shift very quickly into this balanced state. Remember what we did last week? We put ourselves in a more challenging situation. So we actually thought of a stressor, and then we started doing this practice. Inhale on 4, hold on 7, exhale on 8, or just inhale on 4 and exhale on 8. So this is one way you can continuously teach your central nervous system to find a balance in any situation, especially in current environment we're in. There's always something stressful. As you tune into the practice like this, you know, when you're surveying yourself, if you find the areas that feel really heavy or tired, one thing you can do, don't force anything, but try to bring the breath into that area. So right now I feel my whole head is like congested, and even though I don't feel congested, but I just feel a lot of heaviness. Maybe it's just because I've been talking for a full hour and stressed with all the questions. I'm just kidding. I'm not stressing me with any questions. But point being is, you know, I'm just feeling it this way. So I'm going to literally try to bring breath into my forehead and see if it'll shift anything. Okay, let's do a couple more breaths. So we end on time. All right. As usual, I'm going to hang out here for 10-15 minutes. If anybody have personal questions next week, thanks, Janet. We're going to have Niall. You all know her. They are occupational therapists and the founder of Blue Nile Therapy. And also with Niall, we'll have Cynthia Powell, who is our GW CIM MBSR instructor. So hold your questions until the week after. If there's something urgent, email me and Janet. I'll try to address it before. Otherwise, I'll see you guys all in 2 weeks, which would be, I'm guessing, March, what is it? Something. March 7th. No, March 7th is next week. March 14th. All right.
Misha, stop the recording for me, please.
Where?
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
How do I stop recording here?
It should be up at the top.
Yeah, I see it, but I can't stop it.
Yeah.
Like